all of that stuff that's up top, that's where all of your time is being committed right now. And to do that consistently or to do that without burnout is the toughest part, as all of us do in any kind of business that we're in. That's a perfect thing for AI to be doing because AI doesn't get tired of it.
What's going on, world? This is your girl, Marky Lemons-Ryhal. And as you know, we are always discussing how to double your productivity, your lead generation, and your income. Because I travel extensively, I have the opportunity to meet just great people inside of the prop tech space, and it's always about collaboration. So I was one of the speakers, actually a fan favorite speaker at Next Home. I was walking down the aisle, and all of a sudden I see RAIA. Now, sometimes I just keep walking past companies, but this time I said, Marky, stop, because did they just say AI automation? Oh my God, this is what I believe all entrepreneurs, especially real estate professionals, need in their life. What's going on today, Lee? How you doing?
I'm doing well, Marky. Thanks for having me on the podcast. This is 5 months in the making now, reconnecting from Vegas, but
5 months in the making. Yes.
A 5-month Vegas hangover is a real thing, I guess. I don't know, but you've been busy, so that's a good thing.
I have been busy. And let me just say this. When we talk about a hangover, right? If anybody is wondering, I actually have Luke. Okay. So no one needs to question. Luke is right here.
Right there. He's safe hands.
He's right here with me in the comfort of my home. And so, yes, we were in Vegas. The energy was unreal at the Next Home national conference. Like, they do such a fabulous job. And right now, when we start thinking about navigating NAR settlement agreement, a lot of people have lost sight of productivity. Now, as a company, we haven't lost sight of productivity because the real estate franchise I'm affiliated with, we're the number one franchise affiliation in our ecosystem, and our sales have increased 34% year over year. So I want you to tell everybody what it is that RAIA does and how you actually help agents to increase their productivity.
Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest things, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, a lot during, the 30 minutes or so we got here, but right now we're at the beginning and maybe a few steps into the beginning of like that same .com boom feel, right? AI has taken this industry by storm. It's really approaching kind of this inertia point as well, where people are starting to jump in, but they're really not sure how to swim yet. So they're just kind of like, well, I got my floaties. I've got my friend here who knows how to swim, but I'm still trying to keep my head above water and just take it all in, understand what's going on. So what we've done here at RAIA, and when we first built RAIA, it was back in 2016. It was a conversational and linguistics bot. And the whole goal was to be able to create this functional assistant that could carry on conversations and help lead those conversations to a conversion. So where we found the best runway to do that was by looking at at that time real estate, saying, okay, well, if we can understand a specific task or role or job, 5 to 10 minute tasks are things we love to automate, right? The things that take away from your day to day, but would be great for an assistant if you had the extra time, money, and energy on your end. So we started sharing that out. In the real estate space, we found that most agents are like, well, I wish you could talk to my leads because I don't have time for it. But lead gen is always a difficult piece too. So what we found is that a lot of people really thought AI at that time was a unique thing to look at, but opening the door to their CRMs or their databases, or even putting it forward facing to their clients without having real trust in it, just wasn't going to work out. So we said, you know what? We're going to table this product. We're going to utilize it internally through Constellation Data Solutions and other businesses that we have within our tech portfolio, and let them use it as like customer service bot, lead qualifications for these companies and all of that. What we found is that 80% of top of the funnel communication could be done with AI without missing a beat. And that's where we said, okay, when the market comes around to this is going to be important. Lo and behold, 2021, 2022, ChatGPT comes out. And we say, okay, time to dust off RAIA, let everyone kind of have access to her. And we've been basically back off to the races since then.
So now I'm sitting over here and I'm drawing myself a nice little funnel, right? Because you said 80%, right?
Go for it.
Top of the funnel, right? And I want to run this scenario by you because you spoke with my son, Skylar, last week. and you had a full-fledged discussion with him being the down payment grant king. But I have a couple of other ideas.
Yeah. And if you want to, let's treat this almost like a brainstorming session. Like, I'm happy to work through. If you were to come to me like, Lee, this is something I want to do. How does AI apply? Like, we can do it in real time. And I think that would be helpful for everyone too, understanding that this isn't a magic ball, crystal ball that we're just going to put our hands over and make something happen. It's really about, just like any business function, understanding the process and figuring out which places you can really insert AI in a reasonable scope to actually let it work.
So lately, I've been teaching a conversion class on for sale by owners, canceled, and expired. When I'm taking a look in my local MLS, I am noticing a common issue with expired properties. Most of these properties have poor quality or lack of photos and virtual staging.
Yeah.
Like, I'm saying 70%, if they just had better photos, they would not become expired, right?
Sure.
So I've been using some other third-party AI tools.
Yeah.
That if I give it any photo, that I can now have it give me a staging recommendation. And then I'm using another tool to identify who that home seller is, because now I can send them a staging guide recommendation of their home. Now,
and the mock-up that they
and the
can
mock-up.
have. I love it.
And the mock-up. So here was the question, because this was something that I ran by Skylar. I want to be very intentional every single day, expired, canceled, for sale by owners. And keep in mind that every expired doesn't need to sell. Some of them need to rent. So we could have different conversations, right? How would I use RAIA to be able to pull these, give me that styling recommendation guide, because I know what that tool is. And I know what the tool is that gives me email addresses and home phone numbers, for it then to say, hey, I have this brand new report for you. Want you to review it, but would love to schedule a one-on-one call for me to essentially relist your property.
Yeah.
What do those 3 steps look like, so that every day we're running through this and it's artificial intelligence?
Yeah, that's a great question. So usually when I'm approaching these kind of relationships, the first thing I want to do is understand how your process looks right now, right? Because the biggest, I think, Wizard of Oz piece that AI has is that it's a black box, right? For most cases, whether you're using OpenAI, Gemini, Llama, Claude, it doesn't matter. Everything, you're kind of putting trust in a process that whatever is inside that black box is going to work for you. Now, we all learn with ChatGPT and trying to all become better prompt engineers when we're using this consumer-facing thing. Yes, there's tons of things inside that black box, but really, for whatever you're trying to do, you probably only need 1 to 5% of what's there, right? So it's about fine-tuning without limiting yourself. Building an AI assistant is, in my opinion, very similar in the sense that you want to find a specific part of that process that can be automated. And if that takes 1 bot, or maybe there's 3 processes, so 3 very specific bots, you decrease hallucinations. For those that are maybe watching this right now that don't know what that means, it means like when you're talking to somebody and your mind wanders and they say, what do you think of that? And you're like, oh, yeah, absolutely. They're like, really? Because I thought it was a negative thing. You go, I don't remember what it was saying. That is what the hallucination is, right? It's AI kind of getting ahead of itself and then trying to come back being like, I really don't know what I should be saying here. So I'm going to try to say what I think you want me to say. And that's what we want to get away from, right? Removing those types of things. So in your use case, you've got all of these types of leads. One thing that RAIA and other, AI automation does very well is going to be, once that lead comes in, or once that person is accessible and you know the context, having RAIA do that outreach and say, hey, I saw your property 123 Main Street, unfortunately, when expired. I took a few minutes to actually look it over. And from where I see the biggest gap was the fact that most of the presentation materials just didn't seem up to par with the quality of your property. I took some time to create a mock-up of how I would relist it, and I have that available for you. Is that something you'd be available or be interested in talking about? That to me is the way you go about it. Just letting that be, let's say, Jenny, your digital assistant, reaching on behalf of Marky to talk about X, Y, and Z. Are you open to having that chat? And then letting that person actually engage with your AI assistant and say, well, what would she do differently? Now, if you've trained her on these things, well, some of the things that we like to do when we look at properties that have expired is try to get a better fit for how it's been, let's say, staged. And I know Marky has some great thoughts on that she could go over on a call. So her job is not going to be, let me make up things to give back to you so you want to keep talking. It's going to say, I need to provide you some type of hook or context that lets the conversation continue, gets them hooked. And by the end of it, it's going to be like, well, hey, you have a lot of really great questions. I would love to set up some time with Marky to continue this offline. Is that okay? And this is being done through text, email, web chat, whatever kind of interface you want.
Okay.
I know we just unloaded a lot, so we can pump brakes and pause there for a second.
Well, you just gave me everything I wanted, right?
Okay,
You just validated my idea, right? And it could be essentially, because they're different tools. One is expired, one is canceled, one is for sale by owners, that every single day at a certain time, these tasks could be automated.
Yep.
Now, I'm going to make an assumption here. Because we're talking about APIs, then RAIA I could have a appointment scheduled, a expired appointment where certain days and times they could book these calls, and RAIA could go on and put that into my calendar for me.
Yeah, I guess if you want to know me asking, what calendar system are you using currently?
I'm using Calendly.
Okay. Yeah, so Calendly has some integrations. It's a little clunky from what we've done so far with it. We have noticed that sometimes there's a drop off if you were to just say, here's my calendar link, pick a time. But if they could come in and say, well, I've got some availability, you have baked in like, well, I know that my expired calls take places on Tuesdays and Thursdays after 2 p.m. So you could say, hey, I've got a link you can schedule directly, or I typically, I'm going to have some availability this Tuesday or Thursday from after 2 p.m. What works best for you? And I'll get it on Marky's calendar. Now, you would receive, once that's all wrapped up and there's a pin in that thread and it says, hey, we've completed the objective, which is create interest, gather qualification if this person's even, not wasting your time, right? Because if they say, oh, yeah, I'd be interested, but I don't want to sell my house for another year now, why are you taking that call, right? Maybe you can uncover or overcome that objection, find out why that is. But we also want to make sure we're kind of teeing you up and you know what pitch is coming across the plate versus just like someone's throwing a fastball and you're like, I had no idea, right? So having the ability for RAIA to either be as precise or, in my opinion, a little bit more human, which is if you got the time, you can click right here on my link, or what times work for you on Tuesday and Thursday. Then she can come back and say, hey, Marky, I've scored this conversation with John Smith from 123 Main Street at an 8 out of a 10. He is interested in relisting. He had a bad experience with his last realtor from the information I gathered. He's not available on Tuesday, but he would be available on Thursday after 2. He just didn't give me a time. So I'm not scoring it a 10, but I'm saying this is better than like a coin flip, right? Now, either you can take charge with that, reach out and say, hey, John, my assistant, Jenny, told me that you want to have some time on Friday. Just to make sure I put it aside on my calendar. I've got between 3 and 4:30. Is there a 15, 30-minute block in there that works for you? Whether that's a text on your part or a call doesn't necessarily matter. But if you think about all the stuff funnel-wise, that now you're at the bottom, you're basically into that push to close and let's talk. All of that stuff that's up top, that's where all of your time is being committed right now. And to do that consistently or to do that without burnout is the toughest part, as all of us do in any kind of business that we're in. That's a perfect thing for AI to be doing because AI doesn't get tired of it.
Oh, and then they can add them to the customer relationship management system, tag them properly, and we already have our email follow-up sequence.
Even that, or you can have RAIA, again, depending on the CRM you're utilizing, access that via API. So we have a lot of agents within KW, within Next Home, Remax that all have separate systems. But let's use KV Core, for example, with Next Home, right? There's an open API where we can essentially read and write. Meaning that you have a lead come in, let's say, so not one of these ones that's already established, but let's say you generate one from one of your funnels. Lead comes in, you're in an appointment, you don't have time for speed to lead, but Jenny does. So lead comes in asking, coming from a first-time homebuyer website, hey, this is Jenny, I'm Marky's assistant over here, and I saw that you're potentially looking for the first home for yourself. Congratulations. What would your dream home look like? Not let's book some time, not click here. Let's talk about getting you under contract with what mid-August is going to be when NAR brings down. Everyone's got to be signed by agreements too. So you want to make sure that you understand a little bit about this person. If they're going to take your time right now, do they even have an agent? Like we want to know that. So give her some questions, train her like you train a human employee that's going to be doing this for you too. She's just going to do it the exact same way every single time versus someone having a bad day, sending too short of a text, being like, I'm not going to follow up with this one. It's a waste of my time, and losing out. So that to me is a few ways that, you can automate to a point, but you can also take it a step further and just say, look, RAIA, I'm going to give you a seat on my system. I'm going to have you access this API. You're going to catch leads when they come in, go through these like workflows for me. Create hot if they say, yeah, I want to talk to her. Create, warm if they say now's not a good time. Create cold if they tell me to go kick rocks, like whatever. But that to me is another really good way of saying, if I'm going to apply AI, I just got to put this in phases. What's my low hanging fruit right now? What are the things that every time it happens, I go, I know I got to do this, but I don't want to do it. Like that's a great spot for AI to step in right now. And then the other things where it's like, well, now I do this, but I don't want to have to do this anymore. I don't mind it, but it's not something I really want to do. That's a phase 2. And then phase 3 are sometimes the things where it's like, I like doing this part, but I know that it takes my time. So rescinding that control, like that's the same thing with an employee though. You go out and hire somebody right now. You don't just basically give them free access to your business. You kind of roll them out in stages. AI is no different.
So you mentioned the NAR settlement agreement, which is scheduled to roll out on August the 17th, right? And when I'm thinking about that, there were only 13 states prior to the NAR settlement announcement, which was Friday, March the 15th, that already had mandated through licensing rules and regulations an exclusive buyer representation agreement or a signed buyer representation agreement.
Yeah.
So now that's 37 states that did, right? But even what I've come to realize, regardless to those 13 states already having it, some of them weren't practicing it.
Of course not.
Right.
I mean,
so,
I don't mean that in a negative either, but like
they weren't practicing.
Exactly.
So with that being said, in one of the greatest ways to trying to meet RAIA moving forward is on that value add, because we keep talking value. What's your unique selling proposition? What is your value add? Because we could train this system essentially, right, on providing value so that we can get a signed buyer representation agreement. Actually, she could be trained on the tone, the voice to show empathy, what's in it for the consumer. Every step of the process from the moment they come into your funnel, right, to demonstrate your unique selling proposition. Why should they even want to sign this agreement? And honestly, it won't even be a problem for RAIA. Like RAIA probably would love this task, right?
Exactly, right?
Right. This will be a sweet spot as opposed to not every single agent, but a large percentage of agents having a issue. And I'm seeing the fear in their eyes of demonstrating their value. And so this is just another reason for leveraging AI. But what I'm explaining to people, AI is systems. And it gives you the opportunity to take a step back. It gives you the opportunity to plan for retirement. It gives you the opportunity to have something worth selling. In retirement, right? Because this is a system, packaging it, and it should be able to enhance the value of 100%. Whatever it is that you're selling in the future. So when you look at how people are using RAIA, what's one of the most unique ways you think that your system can be leveraged?
It's a really good question. And one of the things that I always try to look at with that is even real estate as an industry is so vast in weird use cases, right? I don't mean weird as a negative. It's that things that a person that's not in the day-to-day thinking like, oh, there's no way anyone would want that. Somebody in real estate would be like, oh, I'd pay for that tomorrow. And it's like, oh, okay, well, then we need to figure out a way to do that. So some of the biggest 3 pillars, I would say, in really any industry, sales, support, and marketing. Right? We always look for tools that are going to help us in one of those 3 channels, sometimes multiple channels. In real estate, I would open that up into maybe support is kind of segmented into like direct client support. And then we talked a little bit before we jumped on here with investing, right? Now you're talking about property support. So 2 use cases that I think are really cool that some people are looking at right now. One is sign companies that sell you guys, your open houses, I'm the listing agent on this, and having a QR code. You scan that. Then when you scan that, the house talks to you. Hey, This is 123 Main Street. I'm a living digital assistant that has access to all the information on this property. I got my virtual tours here. I've got access to the HOA docs in case you want to ask me questions about the HOA. What do you want to know? Now, again, they can reach out to the agent and do a lot of this too, but I have friends that are, licensed that have sometimes 10 to 20 listings at a time that they're in some portion of, right? Like whether they are the direct listing agent, whether it's part of their team, whatever. So having someone be like, hey, I want to know about this house. And then you happen to be like, what house are you talking about? And it's like, oh, the one in Oak Creek. And it's like, I got 3 listings in Oak Creek. Like I have to keep going through this stuff. Like go talk to my assistant. Versus they go there, they're driving around at, 10 o'clock at night and they're doing their whole like, oh, I want to look at this house on Zillow. But they scan that QR code. They just start talking to maybe Jenny, the digital assistant, who's like, here's some screenshots of, or photos from inside. Here's our video walkthrough that, the agent Marquis did. The HOA is currently $150 a month, but it includes X, Y, and Z. Homeowners insurance on this property right now runs about $4,000 a year. And, they currently don't. I'm located in Florida, so this is a neighborhood that doesn't require flood insurance. I mean, there's so much data that we all have in different portions of the world, right? And once it all becomes siloed, that's a knowledge base that RAIA can use and react off of. So if somebody's asking a lot of very important questions, very detailed questions, they're probably more inclined to actually be interested in this property than someone that's just like, how much does it cost? If they're asking questions about HOA, insurance, like, is there noise ordinances? I don't know, maybe they're throwing parties, who knows? But all of this kind of stuff is so important to have. That to me is one use case. The opposite side, so outside of residential and looking into someone being maybe an investor or having properties that they manage, is having a 24/7 service manager. So think about the calls or the texts or things you get where it's close to midnight on a Tuesday and your kids are sleeping and you're ready to go to bed and it's like, hey, my toilet's running. Man, this couldn't wait till the morning. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but if you reach out to RAIA and say, hey, I want to let you know my toilet's running. Okay, well, talk to me a little bit about that. Like, is there water on the ground? Is there damage to the wall? No. It kicks on every 10 minutes or so. It sounds like it's sucking air and then it turns off. And it's like, okay, RAIA will know that I can get that over to a service manager. Maybe it's you. If you run a property management company, maybe at that point, it's like, let me get you to John, who runs the service department. But being able to gather information and say, hey, I'm going to have someone contact you, and knowing kind of when it needs to escalate. Hey, there's water coming through my roof. That's something that needs to get addressed right away. You would get an alert to that. Maybe you build a bot who's essentially an alert bot that goes, I'm only calling you because 123 Main Street has an emergency. Here's the information on the emergency. Time to take care of it. Right? So we've seen larger portfolios and some investors that have, not maybe 1 or 2 properties, but 10, 20, 50 properties going, well, I would love to have something I can pay a couple $100 a month that literally just operates 24/7. Because right now I'm giving it to a VA somewhere. And even then, like they're only working their VA hours. So there's still gaps in the coverage. AI doesn't have that anymore. Now you're giving AI the context and the confidence around, here's your job role. Here's what I need you to do. Here's where I need you to get me involved. And then we run through those tests, making sure that whatever knowledge you want RAIA to have, she has. Whatever protocol is when something goes wrong to where it goes from there. We just basically treat it like we're training a human. And then instead of it taking months to where you feel comfortable with that human going, now it's days to weeks before you're ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, because you're able to make those adjustments substantially faster. And even when we outsource, right, thinking about language barriers, one, it might be a lot easier because of the accuracy of translation inside of AI versus the translation of an individual. So
absolutely,
my Canva certified creator, she is in the Philippines, right? There is a language barrier. Now, mind you, I've worked with her for years, but sometimes we have to go back and forth to make sure that we're on the same page, just based on the language barrier. But inside of AI, if you looked at probably the 3 most spoken languages in the world, you're still going to get 95% accuracy on that language translation, leveraging artificial intelligence. Since I brought that up, one thing that did a couple of trainings last week for RPAC, right, which is the Political Action Committee of the National Association of Realtors. And we were talking about fundraising ideas, but more importantly, demonstrating our value. The fact that a buyer using a VA loan can now compensate their buyer agent representative. The fact that we fight and advocate every single day to keep our 1099 status. The fact that we're fighting and advocating to keep some of the deductions that we have as being self-employed with the 1099 status. What I'm thinking now is how to use RAIA in our advocacy work, right?
100%.
Taking that information, because most licensed professionals do not understand the fact that we're the purple solution. It's not about being the red party. It's not about being the blue party. It's about us reaching across the aisle and doing we're the only pack for private home ownership rights. We fight for private home ownership rights, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm just thinking, okay, based on some of this information, how more effective I could be as a major investor, president circle, federal political coordinator, because it can interact with some of these different systems and all of these different things that we're advocating for, disseminating that. And essentially, now that I'm thinking about it, Lee, that's value add.
Yeah.
The fact that every single day, me and every other major investor, president circle, federal political coordinator is out here advocating on behalf of private home ownership rights. Did you know that as a veteran, you can now have representation? You know, that you can compensate, because you couldn't have that.
Right.
And that did not exist before we went to NAR, where we went to realtor legislative meetings.
Right.
So the possibility, so you're not even scratching the surface on possibility.
You caught me right in a good water sip there too. But I mean, the possibilities, it's so cheesy to say the possibilities are endless, right?
Yeah.
But it comes back to the point of just being like, all right, if we want to approach advocacy and getting more veterans, more knowledge on what their benefits and the ways that we can get them into a home are, what's the biggest issue when it comes to that? It's probably one of them is going to be bandwidth, right? Who's making the outreach? Who's going to be the person available to have that knowledge? So in a separate use case, one that I can't talk too much detail on just because of NDAs that we have in place there, but working with, let's say in this sense, a government entity that has specific programs that it needs the masses to know about or the masses to be able to ask questions. Right now, those go into call centers or go into knowledge bases online, which unfortunately just still take you into, well, I don't really know what I'm trying to find, but I have questions. So I need to talk to somebody that can help me discern what I need to know, right? We all have that. So in a use case like this, where you could have a veteran assistant who has all the rules, the regs, the access to that knowledge behind the scenes. And then as an agent, I can ask questions because I need to know about specific plans or opportunities that maybe I'm just not up to, par on. If I'm a veteran trying to understand about qualifying for loans or what my representation is or what are my rights when it comes to going through these processes, what programs do I have access to, any of that. If that lives in a database, RAIA can query against it and not have to just pull it out verbatim and say, here's 10 bullet points of all the things you need to know. That's kind of the issue sometimes with ChatGPT, right? It's, I want to get some knowledge. And it's like, well, here's everything you need to know. And it's just an info dump. It might say, well, hey, if you're thinking of purchasing a home and maybe you're a first-time home buyer as a veteran, let's just use that as the example. There's really a 5-step process that you want to go through. Can I help you understand that? Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, step 1. And now it's only providing information as the conversation continues to not overwhelm the consumer or even an agent maybe that's newer to this world, and giving them the confidence that every time we take a step forward, it's because they actually know what is happening and not just info dump. Do you want to do this? Yes or no? And the person's like, I don't know, because you're going to find that people jump in and then immediately retract back because now they're nervous. Or they don't jump in because they don't want to feel nervous. And then it just gets tabled. And then 6 months later, they come back at square one. So I do think that advocacy for a lot of these types of programs is kind of an underseen AI use case, only because we look at it as sales, support, and marketing really as these main channels, whereas support is probably 5 to 10 separate silos that you could say, oh, well, this one's for this specific lane of support. This one over here is for specific, like underrepresented groups or advocacy groups. Like there's a lot of ways you could, start to really compartmentalize this. And again, it just makes everything so much better from where AI can now approach it with a very clear cut and decisive, this is what I can do for you.
So what I'm envisioning now is the ability to be able to serve underserved communities substantially better, because we're able to reduce the cost and create, I would say, more solid systems. And instantly, I'm just thinking outside of the box, even with Skyland, the down payment assistance. So one thing we recently had, he was like, well, Ma, I want to increase my average price point. I said, I get that. And so we came up with a way that he could easily increase the average price point from, I would say he's probably right at 300 to that 450 mark, right?
Sure.
I said, but the problem with that is now we're looking at multifamilies versus single family residents, right? Mm-hmm. The same pool of buyer can afford more if we have at least one rental income to offset the debt to income ratio.
Exactly.
The problem with that is, do we have enough inventory for you to keep the same sales volume? Right.
Yeah.
And so now, running two systems simultaneously, one is to seek out those multifamily properties, right? Mm-hmm. To be able to match the buyers to get to the higher price point, where technically the average agent would not have enough time to be able to do both at the same time, right? One, the desire to get up every single day and to seek multifamily sellers to pair up your buyers with
for sure.
Oh, it's a huge grind, right? You don't get enough time.
Yeah.
But if you're running, you're running RAIA, right? Then I could have my buyer qualification, right? And then I could have my identify the multifamily. And if we looked at the cost, right? Essentially, this is two agents running at the same time. I could get to that higher price point because we could use 75% of the rental income to offset the debt to income ratio. So if the rental unit is $2,000, we get to use $1,500, right?
Yeah.
You can qualify for a whole lot more property with an additional
$1,500 is coming right in.
Right.
Absolutely.
$1,500 is coming in. So now, because now I'm working this all out. You said I can come with these hypotheticals.
Yeah, it's good.
On how an agent would use this and demonstrate their value, because not only are they a listing agent, but they can also get assigned by a representation agreement. Now, I want everybody to know you got to go back and look at your licensing rules and regulations. Is this going to be a dual agency? Are you going to do a for sale by owner with compensation or a ministerial acts notice of no agency? I just think I covered it all, right? Yeah. Because I don't think that agents should practice dual agency, and here's why. Then they're probably going to get some text and emails about this. There is not one licensing, no licensing rules or regulations in any state that state that you have to represent both parties to the transaction to keep all of the compensation. So I like to reduce the liability, which means you could do a for sale by owner with a buyer representation agreement, or you could list the property but do contingent upon your licensing rules, ministerial acts, or notice of no agency. You can get all the freaking money and put the deal together because you've demonstrated the value. And one of the reasons I brought up the for sale by owner is because, do I really want to create competition for all my buyers?
Yeah.
Right. Do I really want to put the property into the MLS? Some of you don't, which is why you might still want to solicit them, but do a for sale by owner with compensation. Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
You have given me so much to think about. However, I know that Skylar is reaching back out because he has some things that he wants to set up.
Yeah.
Because you are a true solution to the problem, a cost-effective solution where they will be able to net more money. How does one work with your organization and learn more about leveraging artificial intelligence to be able to automate their businesses and build systems?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things, that we really focus on over here is being a partner versus a vendor. Again, the whole reason that you're doing this podcast is not because you're thinking that every single person that watches it and does real estate is going to come to you and be like, hey, I'm going to pay you X to give me your knowledge. Like, we treat this as, look, if we're going to come in and we're going to work with you, we want you to understand how this is going to actually apply to your business, and not just swipe your credit card and figure out 6 months from now that you weren't at a stage you really needed that piece, right? versus, and this gets me back to my .com boom piece, that basically everyone right now is taking AI and slapping it on its product and saying like, check out my cool AI stuff. And I'm not saying that all of them are incorrect with that, but one thing I will touch on is that, and this is for everyone that's watching, keep in mind that to me, there's really two different things when it comes to AI. You're going to have additive and dynamic. And I mean that in your experience and how it's engaged. So additive is you have a process that you're going to see AI add to that process to maybe make it slightly better. So let's say a CRM says, hey, we've got AI that helps you write your emails or figure out better times to send it based on open rates or creates content for your blog, right? And it's going to be based on what you already have in place. So great. It's adding to that process. It's making it a little bit easier. Dynamic is saying, I'm giving you this task, this job, this role. I need you to do it without me interfering. And it says, perfect. I would say 95, 98% of solutions that are out there right now are additive, meaning it's going to kind of make it slightly better. And there's very few solutions like ours that are dynamic, meaning you're essentially training a assistant to do something for you. And that's why I think it's really important to understand the differences there. But when it comes to our company, we're RAIA, RAIA. So you can go to RAIA, B as in boy, O as in Oscar, T as in Tom.com. So RAIAbot.com. You can actually use our bot maker that's right on there, and you can spin up your own bot as a demo. There's no cost to you. It lives for 72 hours and just play with it. Absolutely free. There's no restriction on it at all. So I'll make sure to send you that link so you can, play around with that too. But this is going to be a very basic rudimentary bot. This is actually the one that we were showing you at Next Home too. So if you're an agent saying, I'm looking to build an assistant that can help me qualify leads or looking to buy and sell real estate in my area, the more context you give it as like the questionnaire goes on, but it takes less than 5 minutes to fill out. And then it gives you a web chat option where you can go in and start talking to it right away. You can text that number, you can email it and see all of the ways that RAIA interacts with you. And it's really awesome to do because you might find that, oh, well, I'm really comfortable with these conversations, but I don't like it using emojis, or I don't want it to do this or that. Great. When we actually spin up your bot, then we're doing the tweaking and the adjustments. That is important to know where your business is and how you want to represent it. With the bot maker, it's really great to say, if I were to pluck a kid right out of college and say, here's my industry, I want you to help qualify people, and here's the questions I want you to ask. Like AI can do that within 72 hours. Like that's an easy one. And most people are not going to give a college kid like keys of the kingdom and say like, go out there and find me business. But AI can. So I think, if anyone that ever wants to reach out, even just to pick brains, you can find me on LinkedIn, Lee Dickson, Dickson. You can find us at RAIAbot.com, or, obviously reach out to Marky with any questions, and hopefully I'll be helping you guys too with this, because I love where Skylar's head's at. We're actually approaching his path on that, finding ways to access those databases and be a forward-facing. You have questions about all the tools you need, talk to my assistant. She'll help you narrow down the products that we think are best, and then he can step in and just basically eye test, go, yep, those three are good, and then let it rip from there.
I love it. And one thing that you just said, the word interfering, and I never thought about it until you said it. The fact that when you're using RAIA, that AI is going to continue to work. When I go to the office, and let me be clear, I have not been to my office this year. We have 4 Chicago offices. I have not been to the office. The reason is because I can't get any work done in the office because there's going to be interference, right? Yeah. I'm going to deviate my attention. I'm going to go chit chat at the coffee stand or the popcorn, because we got a fresh popcorn maker there. Yeah. Something is going to happen. That AI, while I'm over here chit chatting, right, cracking jokes, is still working. It's still getting up every single day, doing the lead generation that I needed to do, or what you said, our 3 supports, sales, support, and marketing, those 3 things that I need done in order to, one, continue to stand out, but to also garnish new market share. Yeah. So I will tell you, Lee, meeting you guys, and it took some time. Like, your stuff was sitting here on my desk for the longest.
It's all good.
Yeah. And I was
You've been busy. Like, trust me, I get it.
Yeah. I was like, but Marky, and I went back through it one day. I said, oh, this is the solution, girl. Get back on the phone with them. So I appreciate you for being here. Everybody, go check out RAIA Bot. as a tool in your business. AI isn't going to go anywhere. We are consistently trying out new tools and services because in the first 6 months of us leveraging artificial intelligence, we was able to increase our productivity by 263% and our income by 281%. I love these tools because I do have a retirement date written down in mind, whether I retire or not. Thank you, Lee. Your information is valuable.
Thank you, Marky. I'm glad to be here and I can't wait to do it again.
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Take care.